On June the 12th and 13th this year, I visited the Alton Towers Resort, attempting to conquer each and every roller coaster in the park. After visiting, I realised that during my trip, I had hit a whopping 100 subscribers on my channel. Thank you so much for all the love and support. It means the world to me. I can't explain how amazing you all are. This video will work in order of the rides that I completed. For example, my first ride at Alton Towers this year was the Smiler. Therefore, I'll give my ranking out of 18 rides for the Smiler first. Huge credits to my cousin Rollercoaster Dude AT for the idea. As always, his channel's in the description, so please subscribe to him. Without further ado, I'll start the video. Usually with short break guests, they enter through the Galactica entrance gate. However, I had VIP priority parking included with my Nemesis Reborn behind the scenes tour, so I went through the iconic front area of the park and I saw the iconic corkscrew. I headed straight down to Spinball Wizard, knowing it regularly accumulates large queues. However, a staff member informed me that it wouldn't be open for guests to pre-queue. I headed down to the Smiler instead, and by now it was 20 minutes until the rides opened, and there was barely a queue for the ride. As soon as it became operational, I got an amazing walk-on experience in the second row. By the way, that first drop feels massive when you haven't ridden it in almost a year. The ride was originally in first place of all my coaster credits, but this year it was knocked down to second by another amazing ride at the park. The Smiler's still an incredibly fun roller coaster, and I got such a smooth ride on my second day in front row. However, the ride was running slightly rougher than expected. After my first ride of the day on Smiler, I headed towards Wickerman to see it up close for the first time, but I noticed that Spinball was on a 10-minute wait. If you've ever been to Towers, you'll know how horrible the queue for Spinball usually is, so I was so excited to basically walk straight on. There was quite an unbalanced spin that added so much more intensity to the drop into the horseshoe element. I almost re-rode it immediately, but unfortunately this ride only sits at 9th place. I wish I could put this underrated masterpiece higher, but the other rides are just so much better in comparison. I walked down to Wickerman and was immediately so impressed with the theming that it made the 40-minute queue enjoyable as I watched the train lap round the layout. When I was watching the pre-show though, a bunch of school trip kids started screaming like they'd seen the queue time for Smiler, despite the video not being scary in any way. Annoying, but kind of added to the experience, I guess. When I rode the coaster, I hit back row, and no one told me how fast the ride was. There were some amazing lateral forces, and I felt like I was going to fall out of my seat during that first enclosed airtime hill. Later on in the day, it began raining, so I immediately headed to Wickerman for one of the last laps on the day, and it was so fast I had to staple myself just so I didn't fly out. The ride was easily 10 to 15 miles an hour faster than before, speeding into 4th place on my rankings. After Wickerman, I headed to Katanga Canyon for my first ever ride on Runaway Mine Train. On the outside, it appears as a kids' coaster, which it mostly is, but it has two wildly intense elements. The inclined helix is amazingly intense when in front row, and this part of the entrance to the tunnel is quite intense for some reason, and really surprised me as I was expecting a tame kids' coaster. This coaster shocked me, but since it's not very thrilling other than the short moments of intensity, it's only ranked at 11th place. Once I completed Runaway Mine Train, I headed to the Congo River Rapids, which was only on a 15-minute wait compared to the 45 minutes I waited last year. I didn't get wet this time, but it was fun waving at the Runaway Mine Train. The final lift hill is a bit boring, considering it goes up just to get back to the station. My little brother thought it would go through more of a layout after. Whilst it is fun if you get wet, the Congo River Rapids is a bit too tame for my liking, and it's only 13th place in my rankings. I headed to Cursor Alton Manor after, and as usual it broke down on me right at the jump scare element. It was like history repeating itself, but this time it didn't just stop once or twice, it stopped 3 times. I don't know if the ride's usually problematic, but every time I ride it, it seems to break down. I don't know why, but this ride's in 12th place. It does have amazing theming and a great atmosphere though. After knocking out Cursor Alton Manor, I headed to Forbidden Valley for their brand new ride, Toxicator. I immediately ran to the Topspin ride and couldn't stop taking pictures of the amazingly themed ride. I was shocked at how well it blends into Forbidden Valley despite its neon green colour scheme. The ride itself is absolutely incredible and the theming just complements it amazingly. On my second day, it was running on a great cycle, and in the morning I lapped it at least 5 times consecutively. If you don't know what the cycle is like me, then the ride's so much more fun as you flip around and dangle like a piece of meat. I did learn 2 lessons when waiting, however. 1. Don't use a single rider queue since it's usually slower than the main queue and will actually increase your waiting time. The other lesson is to never wait when it's closed. If it closes down, then you should immediately leave the queue. Since every time Toxicator closes, it usually won't reopen until at least an hour later. In the rare case that it does open soon after, you can also rejoin the back of the queue since it usually has a very short queue. For an overall amazing experience, this ride stands at 3rd place. Towers definitely need more incredible, highly themed flat rides like Toxicator in the park. After being stunned by Toxicator, I headed to Nemesis Reborn, which was walk-on the entire 2 days of my visit. But at first I was kind of nervous to see if the rattle had gotten worse since my last visit. But to my surprise, it was really smooth. It was such a fun ride that I found fairly intense but so enjoyable. The theming's very visible on ride when you get front row, but I still prefer the back row since with all coasters it has the weight of the front half of the train yanking you through the elements ahead. I don't know what it was that changed my mind about Nemesis, but it shot up in my rankings, and I hate to admit it, but I barely prefer it to Smiler, leading it to take 1st place in my Alton Towers ranking. After finding my new favourite ride, I headed for a few laps on Galactica, which was previously one of my favourite rides at the resort. Whilst my younger sister was waiting in the 40-minute queue for her first ever ride on Galactica, I got 3 laps on it in the single rider queue, the first of which was in back row. Back row on Galactica is by far the best seat, and I fully recommend it to anybody who hasn't experienced it yet. There are 2 great moments in back row. The first is when you're at the top of the lift hill and the front of the train makes it over, so you end up being quickly pulled ahead by the weight, given some great airtime. The same thing happens on the first drop. The track rises into a small hill before plummeting down headfirst through the tunnel. You can really pick up speed in the back row, and Galactica's a must-do ride at Alton Towers. Despite the amazing experience, it does stand out in the lineup for not fitting into Forbidden Valley area as well as always maintaining large queues. Unfortunately, a variety of reasons make this ride go down to 6th place in my rankings this year. On the second day of my visit, I cleared out Forbidden Valley again, but Nemesis Subterra was closed on both days of my visit, meaning I didn't get a chance to experience it. Luckily, I did ride it last year and it places 10th in my ranking. I can't remember much, but it is a fun ride with some amazing surprise elements that I was definitely not expecting. But I do wish the drop was a bit bigger, because 6 metres is quite measly. After Forbidden Valley, I headed to the Dark Forest for 13 and Rita. However, Rita was still shut at the time, and whilst I'm uploading this, it was currently undergoing essential maintenance a few weeks ago for unknown reasons. But thankfully, I did manage to get a ride on 13 using my fast track, but it immediately shut down for 20 minutes whilst they transferred another train onto the track. I don't know if you guys know, but I do quite dislike 13, since it was overhyped and in my opinion boring, except for the special element near the end. I wasn't that excited to go on, but when the train began to crest the lift, I realised that the drop's actually really high on ride. I know that everyone always moans about the trim brakes on the drop, but I don't know if I got lucky, but they actually weren't turned on during my first ride, so I got the full free-fall experience this time, and it delivered loads of floater airtime. The first helix was really intense with the speed the train was going at, and then the airtime hill after that also delivered some strong airtime too. The rest of the layout's pretty mid, including the secret element and the backwards launch. It wasn't as punchy as I remembered, but the unnecessary launch into the station was actually quite fun. With this great experience, 13 slipped a bit higher up in my rankings, but still only sits at 7th place. Whilst I didn't get to ride Rita this time, from what I can remember, this ride should sit at about 8th place in my ranking. Despite having a very punchy launch, it's very rough. Just not as much as people say, so definitely ride it if you're going to Towers soon, especially considering that me and multiple other enthusiasts are now questioning how much longer the coaster has left. I then headed to the world of David Williams for the first time and got to ride 2 of the rides there, Gangster Granny the Ride and Raj's Bouncy Bottom Burp. Raj's Bouncy Bottom Burp was a funny surprise as I didn't expect a farting drop tower to be in the UK's best theme park.
Whilst it was fun, I am a bit too old for that humour, and it therefore only ranked at 17th in my rankings. After the farting drop tower, I headed to Gangster Granny the Ride, since I'd always wanted to ride this when I was young, since I used to love David Walliams' books. However, it was a bit disappointing due to the outdated theming, but it's nice to see a ride that's fully based on a book and takes you through the book like it's a tour. Unfortunately, I have ranked this at last place, since there are better rides at the park, and Raj's Bouncy Bottom Burp does have a few small pops of airtime on occasion. On my way to X Sector, I passed Hex, the Legend of the Towers, and decided to ride it, since Vekoma Madhouses are some of my favourite flat rides of all time. But I was quite disappointed, to be honest. It's more about the build-up and theming than the actual ride experience itself, which is a shame, since I expected it to be more thrilling, like the Haunted Monster Party at Legoland Windsor. Because of this, it only sits at 15th place. The exit paths aren't very clear either, so make sure you open the Alton Towers app to see where you're going. In X Sector, my second favourite roller coaster of all time, as the time of visiting, sat next to the 1998 classic Oblivion. Last time I went to Towers, I was too scared of the coaster to ride it, but this time I went on it twice. It's over in seconds, but it's a really fun ride after all. I didn't actually find the break run that long, so I don't understand why everyone seems to comment on that, but Oblivion still stands at 5th place in my rankings. This definitely helped me face my fears of big drops, so I definitely recommend it to anyone passing by. I'd also like to comment on Heave Ho and Marauder's Mayhem, which are both in Mutiny Bay. I didn't have the time to ride them this time, but they're both fun themed flat rides, and therefore placed 16th for Heave Ho and 14th for Marauder's Mayhem. I hope you enjoyed my video, and the footage I used is mostly my own from my visit, but credits to Attraction Source for some of the media included. If you want a recap of my ranking all in one go, here it is. In order: Gangster Granny the Ride in 18th place, Raj's Bouncy Bottom Burp in 17th place, Heave Ho in 16th place, Hex the Legend of the Towers in 15th place, Marauder's Mayhem in 14th, Congo River Rapids in 13th, The Curse of Alton Manor in 12th, Runaway Mine Train in 11th place, Nemesis Subterra at 10th place, Spinball Whizzer in 9th place, Rita in 8th place, 13 in 7th place, Galactica in 6th place, Oblivion in 5th place, Wickerman in 4th place, Toxicator in 3rd, The Smiler in 2nd, and my overall favourite coaster at Alton Towers, Nemesis Reborn.